Hello, I'm Sam. Welcome to the second session of GVCC 2023. Before I get into some introductions and highlighting the session, just going to run through a couple little ground rules here. So this is the Helping Yourself and Others Through Advocacy session. Thank you for attending. I'd like to remind you that session is meant to be informational and any medical decision should be made with your healthcare team. Please be respectful of everyone's lived experiences. Inappropriate behavior will not be tolerated. We will ask you to leave if that happens. Closed captions are available if needed on the bottom of the screen. This session is being recorded and welcome you to participate in the conversation via the chat feature, which you can find at the bottom. There's also a Q&A box if you have a specific question you'd like to put in. We'll answer those at the end of the session. With that being said, feel free to open your chat as people are already doing and say hello and where you're joining from, and let's get started. So once again, I'm Sam Schneider. I'm Grit Health Senior Research Coordinator. I manage Grit Health's research program, our Insights program. So that's everything from patient-focused drug development to patient journey research, patient experience research, all the way to post-market market insights research. This is the type of research that isn't bringing patients into a hospital and poking and prodding them and giving them investigational treatments, which is a very important part of being an advocate and participating in research. The type of research I do involves participating from your own bedroom in your sweatpants and just sharing your opinions. We do patient journey work, which is informing the people who are making drugs and creating the systems and really letting them learn about the path you took to get to where you are. Patient experience research, which is really highlighting why did person B have a bad experience and person A had a good experience, and really trying to get everyone to be that person B or person A who's having the good experience. And then of course, all the way to market, helping to define a brand, how people talk to their healthcare providers, how they make informed treatment decisions. All of these are important parts of being an advocate and being part of research. And of course, here at Grit Health, we do other types of advocacy work as well. We have our empowerment initiatives like the Advocacy Exchange and the Diversity Oncology series, which are open forums for patients to talk to healthcare providers and other patients. We also have our community events and programs like this, put on by our lovely VP of Community, Lauren. And she always says the first step into advocacy is just showing up. And that's something we try to provide. Even if you're just showing up here, that's being an advocate, becoming informed. If you're just showing up to one of our community events and staying off camera and listening to people, that's being an advocate. So there's so many ways to be an advocate here at Grit Health, and that's just scratching the surface of advocacy. There's so many other ways to get involved, to share your voice, to just be present, or to just learn from others. So that's really going to be our topic of the conversation today. With that, I'd love to introduce the other folks who are going to be joining me today. I'm going to start with one of the advocates I work with here at Grit Health quite often, Ben Hernandez. Feel free to jump on and say hello.
Yeah, hi everybody. Do I go ahead and give my introduction, Sam?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, like I said, good morning, everybody. My name is Ben Hernandez. I participated in a clinical trial back in 2020, CAR-T, specifically Yescarta. It was for refractory diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. I am 3 years in remission. Let's see, I like using my voice to, give my experience not only to people who may be going through the same situation, but I want my experience to be heard from the pharmaceutical companies so they can improve the clinical trials. So future participants don't have to experience side effects like I experienced. I think it was stage 3 CRS, but luckily the medical team at City of Hope, where I received the clinical trial, they took care of me, and here I am today.
So thank you, Ben, and thank you for being here. We have another advocate in the room with us today, Amanda Medina. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Amanda.
Hello, good morning, everybody. I'm so happy to be part of this. My name again is Amanda Medina. I'm 38 years old, and I am from a small town called Taft, Texas. It's right outside of Corpus Christi, small farming community. I have a 20-year-old son. I'm not married, but I have a wonderfully supportive partner, and I have what's called stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. Um, I was diagnosed in July 17, 2018, de novo, meaning I didn't have stage 1, 2, 3, and then it came back. I was diagnosed terminal right off the bat. I did about 10 rounds of FAC chemo, and it shrunk the tumors enough to the point where the doctors were able to tell me to get on oral treatment. So for the past 3 years, I have been on oral treatment, and I am currently at this moment no evidence of active disease, which is the kind of the term remission when you're stage 4, although there's no such thing as remission when you're stage 4. So not only am I a metastatic breast cancer patient, I've now found myself as being an advocate.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. We'll dive into exactly what that means for you in a moment here. Before that, I'd like to introduce our final panelist today. We have Kristin from Seagen. Kristin, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little about the work you're doing at Seagen.
Thanks, Sam, and thanks to Grit for inviting me to be here today. And it's great to see Ben and Amanda. I'm Kristin Olson. I'm the Senior Patient Advocacy Director of Seagen. Seagen is a global biotech company, and we discover, manufacture, and commercialize targeted cancer therapeutics to hopefully improve and extend the lives of patients. And what I do in patient advocacy, what my department does, is we work with amazing patients like Amanda and Ben, and organizations like Grit and patient advocacy organizations to really understand the patient experience so that we can develop therapies that improve the lives of people living with cancer. We look for barriers and issues that patients may have, and we try to make things better. We try to surround the patient with support through the advocacy community, through partnerships, and then we also bring in patients to provide insights to us so that we can do things better at our company.
Yeah, and that's at the core, I think, of advocacy is just listening to patients, whether that's research in a really formal setting or a more casual advocacy conversation setting. Either way, it's listening to that voice and really hopefully implementing changes from what you hear. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Let's dive into some of the first questions. And Ben and Amanda, I'm going to start with something targeted towards you guys. So Ben, I'll start with you here. So why did you choose to bring your voice into research? And you explained a little bit how you've done that in the past and how you're continuing to do that. But I'd love to hear how you kind of took that first step and what that really means to you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, what I had done for me was, extraordinary. And it's kind of my way of giving back. I can't give back through like big donation or anything, but what I can do is I can use my voice, my experience, like I said, not only to help people who are going through the same thing, but also, the pharmaceutical companies to help improve these treatments, and improve the quality of life. So that's why I want to use my voice to help, further that and improve that. And it's really important to me.
Thank you, Ben. Amanda, I'm going to ask you the same question. How have you shared your voice, and why have you shared your voice?
So I chose to share my voice and mainly more advocacy because, again, I'm stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. My breast cancer is in my breast, on my left breast to be exact, and it's metastasized or it's spread to my liver. So we all know that when you're stage 4, there's no cure. Like I said, they consider it terminal, which I hope one day that can change. But since this is my life, and at this moment, this time, there is no cure, why not, if I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down fighting. And why not help use my voice to help collaborate and share my experiences, like Ben said, the things we go through in hopes of kind of bringing some change. So that way for the future, things can be better. But honestly, I found that being an advocate now that I'm no evidence of active disease and I'm in good health, um, I thought back of the time where literally I was in a dark spot, very dark spot. I had lost my job during COVID. It was my son's senior year, took in a kid. We were falling apart. And I thought back at that moment when I actually shared my whole cancer journey, because at that point I'm like, okay, this is how I'm going to die. I'm going to die of COVID, not even cancer. And I wrote my whole an entire cancer journey out on Facebook. And I realized how many people it had touched, people that didn't even have cancer were relating to it. And I told myself, if I can share my cancer journey, it may actually be the survival page to somebody else's journey. And it was at that moment that I told myself, I'm literally giving the public my whole entire life. And that's kind of not okay, because when I go out in public, it's kind of like, oh, there's that cancer girl. Remember she said this? But I'm okay with it because, again, if it's going to help bring change, then I want to be left with that legacy that, hey, that's that girl that helped me. She didn't even know she helped me, but she helped me. And that's mainly the reason why. And also because I come from a small town where we have no resources. And it's so hard to advocate and know these things when they're not coming towards my area. So to me, it's so important to be able to be part of that and hopefully bring some kind of change.
Yeah, man, that's super powerful. Thank you. And how exactly, you're explaining about taking that first step, and that I think the first step is often the hardest step. And for you, that was a public post. For other people, that's joining a session, or there's so many ways to kind of take that first step. How did it evolve from there for you, Amanda? What happened, after that post, after you realized, this was something that you were passionate about, this was something really important for you? What was that next step?
So when I shared that whole post on Facebook, Sandra Gunn, she is the founder of Leslie's Week. So it's a nonprofit organization that I will brag for the rest of my life. That nonprofit, it gives a vacation to the family that's affected by metastatic breast cancer, a vacation in the Smoky Mountains, Dollywood. And I was so desperate. And I had reached out to so many things, and I mean, the paperwork is exhausting. And this was one of the easiest that I applied for. And I got picked. And I cannot speak highly enough about this nonprofit that saved my family at that moment. And it was that nonprofit that led me to Kristin, and it opened so many paths and avenues for me where I didn't realize. I mean, I've always been a strong person, but I didn't realize that there was things like this virtual cancer conference thing, and it opened that door. And since then, I've actually been a speaker at what's called Stage for Change. And this is where people, whether you're the caregiver, you're the husband, you're the patient like me, you get on this stage, and the audience is made up of pharmaceutical companies. It's made up of health industries, doctors, oncologists. And this is where we get to go up there and share with them everything we've been through, our experience, like Ben said, and hope that they're listening, and somehow we can come together to find a solution. Because this is where I learned that the pharmaceutical companies are actually on our side. I'm going to be the first to admit that I swear they were the ones trying to take my money and trying to kill me. But that is like a myth, because in reality, they are there to help. It's just there's so many barriers that we don't know those barriers as patients. So the opportunity that we gave me to be able to speak up there helped open my mind of how they're really there to help, but we have to share with personal experience with them for them to be able to find a solution. So I mean, it's that whole post has led from one door to another, that I'm just like, I'm famous, guys. I am famous. I am dying and I'm terminal, but I am famous. And that's what I hope that other people realize, is that when you find yourself in this dark spot, it can actually lead you to the best part of your life. You're just not there yet, but it's coming. It's coming.
That's a great line, Amanda. I'm going to steal that at some point in the future. So thank you for that. Ben, I'd love to hear, hearing from Amanda how she was taking those first steps. I'd love to hear, what was your first step into sharing your voice? How did you kind of evolve from just a patient to someone getting involved?
Yeah, sure. So when I was first diagnosed, I was originally diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and well, later on that year, I had diffuse large B cell as well. But when I started my journey, I didn't have really any support, outside of the social worker at the hospital I was being treated at. So I hopped on Reddit. I found the lymphoma sub, and people were asking questions. And then it got to the point where I was answering questions for other people. And I kind of thought to myself, hey, I'm being a little helpful here. I'm in a bad situation, but at least I can give my experience to people who are just starting out. And then I saw a post from Grit. Actually, it was regarding it was a webinar, and I thought, why not? Let's see what it's about. I participated in it, and it felt good to share my experience, what I went through, what I was going through. So ever since then, every time I see opportunity to speak, I'll say what I have to say, give my experience, and hopefully it helps somebody out.
You Ben, and I'll echo what Lauren just put into the chat, which it's so cool that you guys both took this first step sort of through social media, which is not how I think many of us think about advocacy. We don't think about advocacy going on Reddit or going on, Instagram or Twitter or wherever we're going. But that is often the first step. The first step often doesn't seem like a first step. It's just opening up or opening yourself up to receive more. And that can make such a difference in your journey. Ben, I'd like to hear just a little more about, your participation in those events, those events with us and the research and anything else you've done. What was that actually like participating in? What is it like to be, a research collaborator?
I mean, it's an overall good feeling, knowing that what I'm saying is making a difference. I remember I believe it was a Grit webinar where it was regarding a pharmaceutical company creating like a new clinical trial, and I was asked questions, based on graphs and other information, and the questions were like, does this make sense? How could we make this better? So things like that, my voice is being taken into consideration to help improve, further clinical trials. So, I mean, like I said, it's a great experience, a good feeling.
Yeah, and as Ben touched on, the research that you can participate in, this kind of virtual research, patient experience research that, doesn't involve going to hospitals. It can be very specific, like Ben was talking about, showing them something that would, maybe it's a patient brochure, maybe it's a informed consent document, or maybe it's a schedule of events for a treatment or a clinical trial. Or it can be really general. Maybe we literally bring people in just to tell us how bad the system is, just to share their opinions. And people really, they get worked up. It's a chance they to just basically yell at us for an hour. And that's great data. When you yell at me for an hour, I have an hour of data of all the things wrong with the system and all the ways we can improve it. And that's so important. And there's so many, different avenues to get to the conclusions that we're looking for being in the industry. And it's listening and it's sharing and it's informing and it's this web that we're building that, I think as, the participants listening to this, as you're listening to Ben and Amanda, all these things coming together to really create a holistic approach to the problems in industry that we haven't incorporated before. And patient experience research isn't old, which is really unfortunate. It is really something that has come into prevalence over the last probably decade or two. And it's so important to listen to patients. And I'm so happy we're having this conversation today. Thank you, Ben and Amanda, for sharing your experiences. Kristin, I'd love to go to you and hear a little bit about how patients are making a difference at Seagen as kind of an example for what pharmaceutical companies are doing. You guys are a great example.
Well, thanks, Sam, for saying that. I would say that biotech and pharma companies have really evolved over the years. I've been doing patient advocacy for over 20 years, actually over 25 now. I'm getting kind of old. And we used to ask doctors about what patients wanted and what patients needed for years and years. We always had physician advisory boards. And as you guys know, as patients, sometimes your doctor doesn't know what you want and what you need. And sometimes they don't have time to understand what those are. And so now we still ask doctors, but that's only one tiny piece of our insight collection. We really bring patients into the company directly. And when I saw Amanda at Leslie's Week in Tennessee, I was just blown away by her and how frank and honest and genuine she was about some of the barriers that she was facing. So I brought her in to be part of a standing MBC patient advisory committee that we started at Seagen. We have one in metastatic breast cancer, and then we also started one in colorectal cancer. And she's been part of that for a year now. And we have just learned so much from that group of people. People living with MBC and caregiver as well is included in that. And we've made changes. We make changes. We use all of that information for strategic planning for the next year to figure out, where do resources need to go? How can we support patient advocacy organizations to work together with us to help support the patient fully? And it's just been an incredible experience. We also started at Seagen a couple of years ago, bringing patients and advocacy staff in individually to look at our clinical studies before we formalize them. So as we're developing what that study is going to look like and how it's going to look to a person who enrolls in that study, we get feedback directly. And we hear from people like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to come in 3 times a week for blood draws. Like, you guys need to figure out how to do it in one visit. I have children, I have a job, and we've completely changed based on this direct feedback. And now we do it with every single clinical study that's phase 3 or registrational. We bring in patient feedback, and it has just been really incredible. All the teams have really benefited by it. And hopefully that makes the experience for people who are volunteering their time and their bodies to research. Hopefully it makes the whole experience better for them.
Yeah, thank you, Kristin. I think a lot of what you're touching on is this patient-focused drug development, which sounds like a big, scary term, but what it is in the last few years, the FDA and the EMA, which are the regulatory agencies here in the US and Europe, have come out with these new draft guidelines, which is really the first kind of formalization of this type of work that we're talking about, bringing in these patients for everything from casual conversations to more rigorous conversations, really shaping how a program works. And I think that's such a cool part about this. There's 2 really cool parts about this. Is one, it's very relatively instantaneous compared to a lot of research. There's research I did 5 years ago in the lab that hasn't been published or released yet. It's still working its way through the research protocols. But this type of research, we can have patients in one day and we can be sharing what they shared with us a week later, and a week later there are changes being made, which is so cool to see that direct translation in real time almost. And then, so Kristin, I'd love to hone in a little bit about what, from your perspective, we heard a little bit from Amanda and Ben, what they looks like from them being an advocate, joining, but from your perspective, bringing in advocates, what's their role in your eyes as they come into your system? How do they come in? How do you approach them? How do we find each other? Yeah, how are you guys hooking up? What is the secret?
Oh, there's several ways that people can connect with companies like ours. First of all, most companies like ours have a person or a department like me, a patient advocacy staff, or sometimes it's called patient engagement. They have different names for it, but finding people like me, that's kind of one way, but sometimes that's hard to figure that out. Other ways is we are out in the community and we are out at patient conferences with advocacy organizations. And that's, I mentioned that's how I met Amanda, is our partnership with Leslie's Week. Leslie's Week allowed me to come and experience that vacation away from cancer with those families. And I was able to really, meet people one-on-one and understand, meet their children and everything, and see what they were going through. And that's another way. And then we also work with different agencies that help us identify patients who want to do this. Grit is one organization that we've worked with many times to help us with insights collection. And Snow is an agency that we work with quite a bit. They kind of keep a library of interested advocates who want to help in different ways. If you want to come in and inspire employees at an employee meeting and speak to them about what your life is like, that's a role. If you want to do protocol reviews on clinical trials, that's a role too. And they kind of help keep us organized on who is ready and willing to want to do these kind of different roles that really help us out.
Thank you, Kristin. I'd love to get going back to Ben and Amanda's perspective. And Ben, I'll start with you. If I was a patient approaching you, I'm like, Ben, it's so cool to hear all the things you're doing. How do I get involved? What would you say to me? What would you tell another patient who's interested in sharing their voice in one way or another?
I would either point them to Grit, or I would say, get on social media, just put your voice out there, start telling your story, and, make sure to make it public. And hopefully someone who is going through the same thing, will hear it, and that voice will be able to help them. That's all I can think of. That's kind of what I did. I didn't know where to look. But if I could give someone a little breadcrumb on how to get their voice to a bigger audience, so be it. That's what I could do.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. And Amanda, same question, approaching you as a patient. How do I share my voice?
So my answer to that would be, what is it that you're passionate about? So again, sorry, there's a train coming through, so it would happen at my time. But anyways, if you like mine, I'm not trying to save the world. I'm just trying to save myself and my small community. So you have to find what it is you're passionate about. For some women here locally, I do get asked that because they see me now participating in things. And I'm like, oh my God, yes, that's me, small town girl making big moves. Is start with what you're passionate about. So if, again, in a small community, we have a Facebook group that we put together. Some of those girls are part of a little group that help women with prosthetic bras. So that is a way to help push them, now you're ready to have your voice heard. Start with something that is meaningful to you. For me, all these little groups in my small town was not where my heart was at. Yes, I love the fact that they were giving free mammograms to women, but I felt I was past that because I had already been affected by breast cancer. So why am I going to go speak to women about going get mammograms, And so I had to find what it was for me. And mine was, I wanted change. I wanted change in my small community. I wanted to know how to become part of that change. So again, it's led me to a little bit like with Seagen and of course a couple other pharmaceutical companies, but it can be something so small. And that little window will help you find the bigger perspective of what it is that you want to do. It doesn't have to be big, like you said, Sam. It can be just helping your neighbor next door. And then from there, it just gets bigger. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes that is all you need to fill that little space of advocacy. It doesn't have to be big. It can be small.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the pattern we're seeing. It's not one big monumental move that is your move, is advocacy. It is all these little things that are coming together. It's the social media post, it's the research, it's the speaking events, it's getting in a room with someone like Kristin and sharing your opinions. It is all of these little things. And I just have to once again echo, my VP of community here at Great Health, Lauren, that just getting into a community meetup, even just talking to people, going through the same experience, just listen, even if you don't want to use your voice, just listening to them. These are the first steps into advocacy, which are so, so important, and something that we're passionate about. Grit, Seagen is passionate about it. And, the one other thing I want to mention, it's so great to be in this industry at this time where there's this huge focus on the patient experience, this almost 180 shift in how we're approaching patients and how we're approaching healthcare. And it's really cool because so often doing the right thing, conflicts with, making money. But this is one of those things where listening to the patients makes business sense. It makes research sense. If I'm listening to Ben and Ben's telling me, I would never take this treatment because of X, that can save a company billions of dollars. I know this isn't about money, but just kind of put in perspective how impactful these things are. We've had data that we've collected from participants. And when I say data, I mean their voices, I mean the words that they're telling us. We've had data that has completely shifted the paradigm of how a company approaches a certain disease type, or approaches a clinical trial, or how they bring their drug to market, how they define the brand. And that's important. How patients interact with pharmaceutical companies is important. Amanda touched on this really early, that there's, there's feelings about the pharmaceutical industry, especially as a patient going through the healthcare system, dealing with insurance, dealing with the financial considerations of this. A lot of us do have some very strong feelings about the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm one of those people, who has to listen to patients every day tell me where the shortcomings are. And we are trying. I will say that we've worked with almost every major bars, I would say probably 5 of the 10 biggest, and they're all doing this. They're all doing this work. They're all beginning this shift, and that's important. So we just have a little bit more time. Kristin, I'd love to bring it back to you, and just hear a little bit more about kind of, and Lauren brought this up in the chat a little higher up. She was asking, how do patients find out what their research does, right? They come into the room, they talk to us. Is there ever what happens there? They tell you their opinions. Do you just send them on their way? What's that aspect of the research, or what's that aspect of advocacy looks like? Is there any follow-up, or how do you continue to talk to these patients? And obviously Amanda's here in the room, so there was some follow-up there. So I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it's so critical that that companies or agencies that are helping companies do this circle back and let people know what happened to the feedback. Like, what did you do with it? Nobody wants to be part of a check the box exercise. Their time is valuable, and we owe it to the people who we are engaging with. We owe it to them to circle back and tell them, by the way, and sometimes it takes some time. It'll take, a few months, sometimes a year, as Sam said, things take
when you go into publications and conferences, it can take quite a bit longer, but it does get out there eventually.
Right. So as an example, the committee that I mentioned Amanda is on, we've worked with them for an entire year, meeting a few different times, and we've put all of that information together, and we are now working on, it's like an infographic. So it's an easy way to kind of convey information to a lot of different people. And I'm bringing that to San Antonio Breast Symposium in December and sharing it with the breast cancer advocacy groups in one-on-one meetings to show what we learned from the MBC patient leadership committee, and kind of pressure testing that with advocacy groups, because there are some things that came up that are gaps that I think only we can work together on. And so it helps keep the conversation going. It helps all of us continue to improve. And that's just really important that these insights move on to the next level, and that we can get these to physician organizations, so they can understand how they can improve and be better as well. It's across the board improvements.
Thank you, Kristin. And I'm going to open this up to all of us. And I know we already touched on certain things, but are there any people or resources or companies that we haven't talked about yet that would be great first steps for patients? Kristin, I see you.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, I was going to mention, if you have a little bit of a science geek in you, and you want to pursue more of the scientific assistance, there's a great organization called RAN, Research Advocacy Network, and they run a virtual free training for patients who are interested in being able to weigh in on the science and on the trials. It's a great program. It's absolutely free. I think you guys will show you guys have the link there. There's also Friends of Cancer Research is another organization. It's based in DC. They do fabulous training in this area as well. But like we said, you don't have to, become a scientist to be able to help us and engage with the industry. There's so many different things that you can do.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm going to move into the Q&A section. We just have a few minutes left, and we've got a few questions here in the Q&A. So the first one we have here, and Ben and Amanda, I'm curious to hear your experience. Someone asked if their doctor's office would have a list of advocacy organizations. In either of your guys' experience, have you experienced any interactions or any opportunities for advocacy in your experience actually dealing directly with healthcare, or have you had to go beyond that and, like you've explained, going to social media? Amanda, I'll start with you on this one.
So I go to MD Anderson in Houston. So you would think, right, that they have like amazing opportunities, and they give you that little sheet you're supposed to fill out and tells you if you're crazy or not. That's what I think of it when I fill it out. And I filled it out at some time where I hit rock bottom, and they come in, they're like, oh my God, you need help. But really, even with the best, I think going to one of the best cancer centers, no, they never said, hey, because they thought I was crazy because I'm literally crying for help, but they didn't really redirect me. Again, I think like Ben said, it's just going to social media and being able to let the whole world in on you and your personal experience with it, and hope that it finds and touches that person that's looking for whatever it is you said. And from there, they're like, bam, that's what we need. We need her to, say this. I shared not that long ago my experience with Unite for Her, which is another nonprofit. And in next week, I'm flying out to Philadelphia as the guest speaker because I shared my experience, not even knowing who these people were. They emailed me and said, hey, we were so touched by what you said. And I'm just like, what? Like, y'all actually listened to what I said. But again, it just takes, I haven't had an experience with my doctor or anything. It's been just on my own and by luck, I guess.
Yeah. And Ben, is that similar? You also went to a top center, as you mentioned earlier. Did you have that same experience?
Yeah, it was a similar experience. The whole experience, filling out paperwork and whatnot. I didn't really hear anything about any like support groups or anything like that. It was just a matter of me, doing my own search, looking for groups where I could get support or share my voice. So that I had a similar experience. Yes.
Yeah, and I think this is the power of advocacy right here. Right now, we have identified a major shortcoming of our medical system right now. These are top centers, MD Anderson, and where Ben got his treatment down in California. These are top centers, and if they're not getting the resources that they need at these centers, they're definitely not getting them at their tiny little community centers that most patients go to. So thank you, Ben and Amanda. That was a great question from an attendee there. I'm going to go down to the next question for Amanda and Ben, and then I have one for Kristin after this. Are there certain, and Kristin, actually, you might have an answer to this one as well. Are there certain social media hashtags that you should be following? Ben and Amanda, you guys both mentioned social media. Kristin, I don't know how active you are, but any advice there?
I follow because again, I'm stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. There's the it's kind of like the American Breast Cancer Society, but it's called MetaViver. It's where 100% of the research goes strictly to stage 4. So there is a hashtag, don't ignore stage 4. And that's kind of more the one that I've gone with, even though you won't see me pushing so much research and funding for them because I feel like the whole world's doing it. But that is one that I do and I have a heart for because I believe in what they're doing. Because again, at the very beginning, when I introduced myself, I said it's 2 to 5% only goes to stage 4. So that's one that I can think off the top of my head.
Kristin, Ben?
Go ahead, Ben.
Oh, Kristin, did you want to go first or?
No, you go. You go.
Okay.
You probably have more.
Oh, okay. When it comes to hashtags, I can't really think of any off the top of my head, but like say relating to what I had done, just Yescarta is the drug that I received. Things like lymphoma, clinical trial, just like key words. I don't really use social media that deals with hashtags very much. When it comes to my advocacy, I use Reddit mostly, but something like Instagram, I'm not too big on using when it comes to my voice for my experience. It's more of a personal thing on Instagram.
Yeah, and like Ben mentioned, Reddit, we don't think about it as a great place to connect with patients, if anyone here knows about Reddit, but there are some great patient communities where you can remain anonymous and you can have conversations with other patients. Actually, one of those communities is hosted by a good friend of mine and a employee here at Grit Health who recently transitioned out, but he runs that subreddit for a specific cancer type. And I'll tell you, he is very passionate about that. He moderates it and makes sure the conversations stay on point. And people are getting the answers they need. So not medical advice, not anywhere you should go to get a professional opinion, but these are places where, again, you can begin the advocacy journey by talking or listening to other patients. We have one final question here. This one's with you, Kristin. This is the Global Virtual Cancer Conference. And, we've talked a lot about, kind of that US-based work, and I do a lot of US-based work. Does Seagen have reach outside of the US, and are they doing this work internationally?
Absolutely. We our trials are global. And we have an office in Zug, Switzerland. And we have an international team there. We also are in Canada. So we have expanded. When I started, we were pretty US based, but we've grown rapidly over the last 5 years and have global reach. And so we have my colleagues in our office in Zug. They do outreach to the breast cancer advocacy community across Europe. And so we're very kind of plugged in with those organizations and, similar to how we are here in the US. So it's definitely a global effort.
Yeah, is there a difference between how you approach that work in the US and how you approach it internationally, or is it very much the same?
It's actually it is different because different countries have certain different laws protecting patients. And so in the US, we're allowed to have a lot more direct contact with patients where, say, in some of the countries over in Europe, they just have more privacy laws in place and more like protections where you really have to work directly with an advocacy organization as kind of the buffer And it's just a different way of working. We still get that great feedback, but the advocacy organization takes a much more central role, basically because these, regulations are in place. So it's a different kind of way of doing it. But in the end, we're still working to gather those insights and engagement.
Thank you, Kristin. And yeah, you definitely highlighted the difference of where you work. And we have all these different regulatory agencies all around the world. We have EMA and the ICH and the FDA, and Japan has theirs, and the Middle East has theirs, and it's it's a lot. And regulations are important. There are really good reasons why we have to approach research the way we do. And sometimes, as a researcher myself, it can feel kind of impersonal because for certain projects I have to have pre-crafted messages, and I can't share what I want to share, and I can't interact how I want to interact, but it's really important to do things the right way. And Kristin, I know you can relate as a professional. It's setting aside that personal part where you really want to connect with a patient. And I'm glad I have a forum today to do that, but then taking the professional route and doing things in a compliant manner that is the right way, and it's important to protect patients. So thank you, Kristin, for touching on that. So that brings us just about to the end of our session. Thank you so much, Ben, Amanda, and Kristin, for coming on today and speaking about advocacy and how to get involved. I think we talked about a lot. There's advocacy is this huge umbrella. Amanda, you brought your piece. Ben, you brought your piece. Kristin, you brought your piece. So thank you so much. Coming up shortly, we'll have a little lunchtime meetup before we get into our next sessions. That'll be hosted by our VP of Community, Lauren. This is just a casual lunch. Again, if you want to take that first step into advocacy and just show up off camera and hang out with us, that would be great. We'll just be talking. There's going to be stuff in your face, on camera, off camera. We don't care. Come and enjoy. After you close out of the session, after the session is over, if you go to our GVCC page, there'll be a couple tiles there you can look at that will have relevant links that we mentioned in this session. And I think that brings it to that. So thank you again so much to our speakers. Thank you so much to our audience for showing up. And I'll see you guys in the lunch hour.